Hey everybody, welcome to the Say Report. This is Sejohn Sarowick along with my host companion,
Ooh,
Devon
host
Decker.
companion. It only
Yeah,
took us 27 episodes, but we finally have a good title for one another. Host
there we go.
companion, Sejan.
Host companion sounds like something out of like some future story that Ray Bradbury wrote. Like, thank you, host companion. I'll take those pills now. Um, Devin, you were saying that you had some stuff that you wanted to get off your chest this week.
All right, so here's what I did. Last week, I went online looking for Resident Evil 4 for my PS4 because it had a physical release, and that made me very excited. So I was able to find it for $15 instead of the $20 that it is digitally. So I
Nice,
went out
very
and I
nice.
bought it.
Well,
And
and you and I have talked before. We like physical things as well. So not only is it cheaper, but on top of that, you also get a physical item with it.
right, and if I absolutely hate it, trade-in value at GameStop is about $10. So I really
Nice.
would have spent $5 total. So like overall, it seemed like a good deal for me. Now my plan was this Sunday I'm going to dedicate and I'm going to play through Resident Evil 4. I had nothing else going on. Unfortunately, life didn't really agree with that, and I ended up running errands until about 5:30 at night. I like went out at like 9 and I'm like just got some quick errands to run, and then I walked through the door again at 5:30 p.m. and I'm like, well, there goes my day of Resident Evil 4. So I came home, and I'm like, now's the time, look around. So I throw my laundry in, I boot up Resident Evil 4, I played for half an hour, and then was like, I need to take a break. I can't do this.
Excellent. Yeah, 30 minutes into that game. So what exactly did you get to, if you don't mind me asking,
Um,
event-wise?
I unlocked one trophy,
Nice.
which is sort of I think it's sort of actually the best way to dictate where I got in the thing, and that is it starts with a ring. And that is, so I got to the village and the church bells went off and then everybody ran away from me, despite like having me pinned down in a corner. Let's talk about it. I like just ran headlong into the man with the chainsaw. I shot him. I kicked him. I hit him with my knife. I kicked him again. And like every time I did that, I was getting other people in like the spray area. So I'm like, this is working out for me, right? This is fine. I was like the dog in the room on fire. I'm like, yeah, this is fine. This is gonna be okay. Um, but
And then that bell rang
and then
out.
the bell rang and it all moved, and I'm like, okay, that's something. And then I'm like, I could continue or I could stop, and I'm gonna stop because it's so claustrophobic. Now,
Yeah.
partially, and I don't mean like with the people, I mean the camera needs to take a fucking step back. It's so close to me. Do
Yeah,
you want to
man.
be a first person game Resident Evil 4 or do you want to be a third person game? Because the second person bullshit, it's no me gusta for Devon Decker.
Well, and that's actually really interesting because I've been talking a lot on the on my stream as well. So yeah, we should talk a little bit about how we've been doing some streaming. And on my stream, I've been playing through Resident Evil as I said I would do, and I've been trying it with Chris Redfield, and it really has been sticking out to me. Like the way that that game is shot and the controls in it, because I'm playing on a version that allows you to change the controls to newer stuff. It's not the old tank style controls as they call them. And I explained it on the stream, so anybody that's really interested can go back and take a look at that sort of stuff. But essentially, I was noting as I was playing, I was like, wow, it's really interesting that the latest one, Resident Evil 7, that was all about Resident Evil getting back to its roots and really kind of doing, this thing where it was really kind of trying to take the series down to a smaller level than it's been the last couple of games. Because with 4 being like the start of it, 4, 5, and 6, that game blows up to like a monumental size, right? And 7, they wanted to dial that back, but also they were like, we're going to get down to like really kind of exploring what Resident Evil was supposed to be when it first came out as a game. So what's weird is what Resident Evil 7 is first person, which is the first Resident Evil to be first person besides like the Umbrella like shooting gallery games that they had come out with. But those are like those are something entirely separate. As far as like mainline Resident Evil games go, they've always been third person over the shoulder or third person action. But always third person, right? So now there's this in 7. You have this first person thing, shaky cam, a lot of weird video effects on scenes and things like that. And I was trying to like I was trying to make that work in the idea that they were going back to what made Resident Evil, and I hit on it when I was in the middle of the stream the other day because I walked into a room and the angle on Resident Evil 1 at which they start shooting your character with the camera, I mean, is so cockeyed, it's not a Dutch angle anymore. It's like an Australian angle. Like, it's completely upside down. It's nuts. And I was just like, oh, that's because in the 90s, this is how they made scary thrillers. They just changed the camera, like the color of the room is now all like blue and gray, and the camera is like cocked sideways, and the music is like either not there at all or so subtle that it's just kind of creeping you out. So it's just like watching a 90s thriller, right? And then I thought, like, well, then that's totally why they do the first person shaky cam in 7, because that's what we think of when we think of scary movies now, right? Like, since Blair Witch Project, that's everything has tried to capture that first person shaky cam, like, view, right? Like, I mean, even all of the Paranormal Activities are that way. Like, we see plenty of, we have Cloverfield to point to too, right? Like, that is an actual thing that has come up in the last like decade of horror filmmaking. And so, like, they did it. They actually went back to what made Resident Evil, like what they were trying to do with Resident Evil, trying to make those kinds of movies. And so, like, I wonder now, looking at the middle ones, like looking at 4, like, were they trying to capture something with this? Like, when did 4 come out? What year?
4 came out. Oh, that's funny. I have the game right in front of me, so I can actually answer this question. Copyright 2005. The original copyright.
So what were we talking about for scary movies then?
Okay,
like,
so 100%. This is a super cool thing because I immediately figured it out. 2004, the world was blessed, and blessed is the word that I will use with cabin fever. And I'm a big fan of cabin fever. As I mean, like, I haven't brought that up on this, but if you know me as a person, face, pancakes. But I'm so sorry. That's such a non sequitur. But also the next year, because that's where Eli Roth like made his stamp and got the approval of Quentin Tarantino, Hostel came out.
Right, and then Hostel becomes the big
100%. Those two films, I mean, just from what I know at the beginning of freaking Resident Evil 4, because again, haven't gone very far. They totally feed into the type of world that this is. Yeah. It's all a very foreign environment. It's you're in the woods and you're clearly on these people's terms.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of the filmmaking then, like, think about the way that those films are shot with like uncomfortable like camera placement and like, yeah, so all of that starts to make sense, right? It all kinds of starts to fall into place.
Doesn't make me like the game anymore, man. Like, seriously, one step back is all I need.
Well, yeah, because, you know, the thing is for me is like that can't be a hindrance to the gameplay though, right? Like when Resident Evil came out in the 90s and there was the tank controls with the weird angles, it was revelatory because games hadn't gotten to a point where we were demanding as much of them as we are now. You know what I mean? Like, it was breakthrough and it was really cool, but you couldn't get away with making a game like that now without people calling you on your shit. Like, your controls have to be good. Your camera has to be tight. Like, all of that stuff has to be right in order for it to work for your player now, because they're more savvy, right? Which is what made 7 so good, is they found a way to make a game that was still playable but still feed into that concept, right? And at the time with 4, it was still, you know, a revelation then, but it isn't now, right? Going back to 4 now is hard, right? I can totally see that. Yeah, you're not wrong, man. That stuff gets crazy. What gets really interesting if you go down this rabbit hole, though, of like Resident Evil like trying really hard to like ape the horror movie genres of its time, it starts to eat itself with 5 and 6, because what happened was that the Resident Evil film series started to become extremely popular, which, as we all saw, turned into an action horror series, not just a horror series. And lo and behold, by the time they get around to making 5 and 6 and that series exists in the world, they actually start kind of doing that and become action horror games, only because the action horror film genre was starting to blow up with things like Underworld and Resident Evil being in the world, right?
That's true, and it still borrows from that whole idea of on foreign soil. by setting it in Africa, and I've never played 6. I have no idea what happened in Resident Evil 6.
Oh, 6 takes that to the nth degree because you play 3 different stories, and each one of them is on a different continent of the world, essentially. So like, or 3 different landscapes, I'll say at least, right? So like, so it takes that to a crazy degree.
And that's very interesting. And you know what? I did promise I'd play through the game, so I'm gonna try to get past what is initially just like, oh, this is bad. It just feels bad, and I'm glad that people enjoy it, and a little bit of it's fun. Like I gotta admit that even though that like I feel like the game is working against me, I know that part of it is just inexperience in the world. Like I draw my knife and then I hit a button to use it, and I'm like, that was the wrong button to use my knife. It has to be the back button, not the forward button. Even though the controls say that either one of them will attack, that's not true.
Yeah, I wonder if what it is that you just need the game to click at some point, because that happens with me sometimes with video games. And I'll say I'm much more forgiving of a video game that takes an hour or 2 to sink in than I am of a television series or a movie, which, I mean, if you're taking an hour to get into a movie, that's it. Half your movie's gone, right? But even like a television series might be a better example in this case. It might take 2 or 3 episodes for me to get into a TV show. There has to be a really good hook to keep me watching for 2 or 3 episodes. With a video game, I seem to be much more willing to play for 3-4 hours, and then finally, if it works, oh my god, I'm in and I love it. Like, and that's the case with some of my more favorite games. You know, it took a really long time for me to get into the first Telltale game that I played, because I just wasn't used to what it was. It was one of the early Walking Deads. I don't remember if it was season 1 or season 2, but it was, so there was that, and then like. And then now I love all Telltale games, but it took a long time for that concept to really kind of work for me. And then like Borderlands is the same way, and I love the Borderlands series now, but it took me a long while to kind of really get into that, like 6 hours before I was like, oh, that's how you're supposed to play this game, right? And I wonder if that's part of it, is because part of it I recognize is on me as a player, that I need to learn how to work within that world, you know? Like once you start to figure out what the controls really are and kind of really embody that, then maybe playing the game becomes like a much better experience.
So I'm mad at you again because you had this beautiful segue point in there, and then you dragged me back into video games. So I'm going to stay on the video game topic, and I'm going to ask you, Sejohn, what was the first video game system that you owned?
In my house, the first video game system that we ever owned was an Atari. But a first video game system that I remember actually putting some hours into would have to be the Super Nintendo. Okay.
So I also feel like that is indicative, too, of the type of games that we were playing in the third and fourth generation of consoles.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of those, the first level is banging your head against the wall until you get a feel for it.
Yeah.
And then once you have that, you slide into it, and the game becomes very, very easy. Not easy, but like you're working with the game instead of having the game work against you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, so it's strange that like Resident Evil 4 is a game that like I start and I'm like, no, I don't want to do this, because I've played so many games where I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. Well, I'll give it another try.
Yeah, well, and part of that is on the designers to like really kind of give you a reason to stick around. Like I said, with a television show, there's got to be a good hook, right? So like that idea that there's something that keeps you coming back to it. And with TV, that's easy to recognize because there's a story or there's a character or something or an actor that we just happen to really like, so we'll stick around longer because we really like that thing. With a game, it's harder because it's all coming from the design team. It all has to, so they have to put something in to keep you motivated, right? The best games show you something, give you a promise of something later on that you're willing to stick around for, right? Like, I mean, if you look at like the Mario stuff, one of the best things about Super Mario World is they show you that map, and all you see at first is just a couple of different options of ways that you can go. But the second that you see the size of that map, you're just like, oh, this level's a little difficult, but if I get past it, there's this really cool world across the way that's like on the other side of an island that I really want to check out. Or that world seems to be at the top of those mountains. I really want to see that, right? So that's always what got me in Super Mario, was that if I couldn't get past a level, I'd hand the controller over to my dad, but I was like, just get me to the top of that mountain. I want to see what's on the top of that mountain. You know, or I want to see what's in that door. I want to see what's in that castle.
Even going further back to the original Super Mario Brothers,
yeah,
your princess is in another castle, is this huge fuck you At the
Yeah.
same time, you're like, but I'm going to get to that other castle.
I got to this one. I'll get to the next one.
Like my father, I remember the day that I got my regular Nintendo, my NES, and he set it up, and we had an Atari too, and my dad was pretty good at Atari. Like, honestly, secret, like, shame of my, not shame is the wrong word for it. It makes me sad that my father no longer plays video games because he used to enjoy them so much.
Yeah.
But, like, he grew out of it, and I understand why he grew out of it because, like, it was a very different time when my father was becoming a man.
Yeah.
But, like, he was very good at Atari. And I remember that. I distinctly remember watching him. Like, the day that he beat the Atari Superman game was a day that he was super proud of. And, like, he would bring it up, and he's like, oh, yeah, I beat Superman on Atari. And, like, the last fight, it's Lex Luthor, and he's in a freaking helicopter. So it's like,
Yeah.
like, just as geeky as we get about games that we love, my father was like that. So it makes me sad that, like, he sort of lost that.
Yeah.
But I remember he set up that regular Nintendo Entertainment System, and he started playing it because it was, I was 3 when I got that, so it was just as much a gift for him as it was for me.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And he sat down and he beat those first 4 levels of Mario, and that's an Atari game, right? World 1-1 through World 1-4 is the length of an Atari game.
Right.
And then, like, the difficulty gets a little harder, whatever. So he did that. He beat Bowser, and he's like, well, there you go, kid. There you go. That's the game, right? Like, get ready for it. Like, he had his fun with it. Now he can move it on to me. And he got to the thing, and he's like, thank you, but a princess in another castle. And he's like, what the fuck? And he sat down, and he played through that game only because that stupid mushroom retainer at the end of the first level was like, close but no cigar.
Uh-huh. Taunting, man. That little mushroom is taunting you. Might as well have like a cigar in his mouth that he's just burning on your arm as he's just like, ha, gotcha.
Yeah. So you're right. There is that hook is necessary, and I haven't found it in Resident Evil 4. But I'm also a big enough person to admit that I haven't really given it 100% yet. Yeah. Like, I'm still trying to get over my own personal hurdles and obstacles with it. And honestly, I think one of them is the fact that I'm playing on a 27-inch monitor, like, right up. So, like, me being so close to the screen is also adding to that claustrophobic feeling. Yeah. Because I feel more like a GoPro mounted on Leon Kennedy's back as opposed to, like, a cameraman following a respectable, like
he's just carrying around
behind.
piggyback through the woods, like, and you're just handing him ammunition as you go. Oh, man.
Turn around quick. That was very easy. Joe Kadowski made that seem hard, but it was very easy.
I was doing it by accident on the stream the other day. I forgot that if you press down, he does like a 180 turn. So Chris Redfield, if you watch a couple of minutes of my stream, there's just me going in circles and me not knowing why. And it's because stupid me, I wanted him to go down and I was pressing the wrong. I look like an idiot on this stream. I feel like a real idiot.
That's the beauty of it. People like to see people who are bad at video games. It makes them feel good about their own inadequacies. Which leads me to a television show that I had to give 2-3 episodes to watch. I don't know if you've heard about this. I don't know if you're watching it. I don't even know if you have cable, to be completely honest with you. Answer that question for me first, Sejohn. Do you have cable?
Cable cutter all the way. All I've been watching is Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime for the last 2 years.
So I don't know what it's available on or anything like that, but TNT has a new show called Will.
Okay, I actually have not heard of this one, so it's not on anything I know of yet.
All right, well, once it is, I'm giving it a recommendation. It's a limited series, which makes me happy, which is the reason why I'm okay sticking around for it, because I know that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Or at least it's supposed to. They're not hoping for another season. And honestly, as much as I complain about How I Met Your Mother and what it eventually became, the one thing that we learned from How I Met Your Mother is if you have a really good story that can be told, in one season, don't listen to the executives. You tell that really good story. Don't try to stretch this out into 9 seasons.
Yeah.
Because the magic will leave.
Yeah. So what do you got?
So Will is a retelling of the life and times of William Shakespeare.
Oh, okay.
Sort of in a Game of Thrones-esque style.
So it's like Shakespeare in love, but it's like Shakespeare in Westeros.
That I don't know what Westeros is, but yes. I compare it to Game of Thrones, having never watched Game of Thrones, because there's a lot of sex for basic cable. And the one thing that I will say about Will, and what, not the hook, because the hook was something else, and we'll get to what the hook is, but one thing I really love about it, very artistic camera work on the nudity. Like, because they can't show nipples or dongs, but they are doing it, like, they shoot it so nice, you're like, this woman is clearly naked.
Mm.
But I know that she's naked, and that's enough.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm not watching it to be titillated. It's just we're in a whorehouse, and we're
All right.
surrounded by whores who are naked
Yeah.
all the
Well,
time.
you know, there's something about the fantasy time like everybody's banging thing that's like really big right now on TV. Like Game of Thrones is a perfect example of that, or this is an example of that, or like Spartacus Blood and Sand was a good example of that. Like if you're gonna put your show in a time period a long time ago, everybody's just gonna have sex all the time. The other one that I was thinking of as you were talking was Reign. That's the big one that's on CW, right? That's all about like a queen, a princess becoming a queen, and everybody on that show is having sex left and right. They're straight up killing people while they're having sex left and right. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, what we've learned years and years and years later about history is when you don't have television, you fuck a lot.
Yeah, you spend all your time fucking. That's apparently what happens in all of these fantasy play like timelines. Is everybody was just having sex with everybody, and it's no wonder that everything was a mess back then because nobody could tell who they were related to, who they weren't related to, what belonged to them, what didn't belong to them.
And that is why the church tried to have so much power, because they're like, no, sex is bad.
You guys got to stop sleeping with everybody, please, just for the love of God, just for like a generation,
just for like
one
10
generation.
minutes. Put your dicks and vag away. God told me.
Yeah.
But that, so, and it's the hook of the show. All right, so here's, and I'll get to some other issues that I have with the show too, because it's only 3 episodes in, so I'm not really ruining anything with that. First of all, there's 2 hooks to this show for me, and one is Richard Burbage, that guy that like worked with Shakespeare on a lot of his plays.
Yeah.
He has a son. Yeah, right. It's his son. Richard,
Okay.
it's the son of the guy who runs the theater. It's all ridiculous, this show, and we'll get to how it's ridiculous. And he like delivered the final speech of Edward III to a hot lady in the front row, and she called upon him. But like, it's because her husband likes to watch her fuck men who he deems lesser than himself. That's how he gets off.
Shakespeare.
Right? That has nothing to do with William Shakespeare. But then, like, the part that does have to do with Shakespeare is her lady in waiting, right? She's, like, not an ideal beauty or anything like that. And she's not really into theater. So, of course, the woman who you can't impress is the woman you strive to impress.
Of course.
So, like, there's this really nice blossoming love story between Richard Burbage and Molly, this lady in waiting, and like that has really hooked me. Like those scenes happen, and I'm like, all the other bullshit, totally worth it. Totally worth it. So I can get like
major players on the show. Is it about them, or or are they like in like 5 minutes of every episode?
Well, he's William Shakespeare's best friend, Richard Burbage.
Okay.
So like, and he overacts, right? So like, it's really also like Will Shakespeare trying to teach him that, like, as an actor, we hold a mirror up to nature. So that, like, he calms down and he reels it in and can appeal to the common man. So there's, like, a nice little story between him and Shakespeare as well. Though there's also another actor who's, like, totally friggin' Iago. Like, just to drop Othello on you.
Nice.
And it's like, and I'm like, this guy's a really good actor, but unfortunately, he's in this guy's shadow because his dad owns the theater and all this. So it's also all the fucking bullshit, like college theater drama that we had to deal with. This show captures perfectly, and I hate that. I fucking hate that because that's like I'm done. I'm done with the show. But then like this beautiful like romantic comedy story comes in, and I'm like, son of a bitch, you got me, show. But that's only one part, right? There are two hooks for me. And the second hook is Christopher Marlowe, as he should be, is a huge character in this show.
Excellent.
And I am watching 100%. I will be tuning in tonight after we finish recording to watch Will, because I am not unconvinced that Christopher Marlowe in this world is a vampire.
That's amazing.
Now, like,
oh my god,
part of
what a
that
great
is that
reveal.
the actor who's playing him played Caius in the Twilight series, so
Nice.
like you know him as a vampire. But secondarily, he has like an underground lair where he does his writing and has his huge orgies with all of these like little boys of the Christian religion, because Catholicism is outlawed. There's another whole storyline about Shakespeare being on like the resistance front in order to make Catholicism an okay religion to practice in 16th century England. Like,
Oh, God.
it's so
Oh,
fucking
God.
crazy. There's so much. And like that's where I'm like, oh, here are the parallels to Trump's America, right? art can get through. So like there's all this, but then like so he has these huge orgies with all of these like younger men. They're not little boys, but also he's just covered in the fucking craziest tattoos. This character, like they took like the legend of Christopher Marlowe and really were like, this guy was fucking crazy. Let's make him fucking crazy.
Yeah,
And
that's nuts. Do they address any of the like spy stuff or anything like that?
that's 100% like that's it. Like he's spying for the Christian church,
Of
and
course.
like and he's ready to turn in Shakespeare, but then he sees how good he is as a writer, how talented he is. So he takes another guy in the theater and cuts his hand because that's how they can identify that it's Shakespeare, and then that guy gets taken away by the church, and it's just like, oh my god, this is super cool. And like the first episode ends with him going, "You owe me your life, Will Shakespeare," and they take a bow together, and it's like, oh, a villain is born.
Oh man, he's
but
like the devil.
dude. And the best indication of that, and this is a thing that like it went to commercial, and I looked at my family, and I'm like, so Christopher Marlowe, he has human skulls on his desk. And they're like, yeah, like in Hamlet. And I'm like, yes, alas, Yorick, I knew him. I know more about Shakespeare than you guys combined. Let's get back on topic. Those have to be real human skulls on Christopher Marlowe's desk, right? There's no Hobby Lobby back then.
Right.
For
Nobody's
them to
around
have
making
been
fake
stolen
skulls.
from Islamic, like, Holy Land and then sold to him for 5 pence. But so they're real humans. Where did he get those skulls?
Oh my god.
And like that's real distracting when I'm looking at
That's
Christopher
awesome.
Marlowe in his freaking like supervillain dungeon lair. Like all of this works for me except for the 2 human skulls. 1 human skull I can get behind, all right? But he got 2. He got a matching set.
Right. 1 human skull, accidents happen, you understand that. Like, hey, the orgy got a little out of hand this week, guys, but hey, we got a skull out of the deal, right? But two you're trying for.
2, that's like those are my parents. They died of the plague, and I keep them on my writing desk
By
so
the
I
plague,
can always.
in my hands.
No, I believe it would be the plague, right? Tragic backstory, and now he has become death incarnate. He is his own personal plague.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's just ridiculous show. It's only 3 episodes in. It's great. Like I'm honestly, as I talk to you about it, excited to watch the next episode.
Oh my
Despite
God.
it being like the craziest bullshit ever, and all of the titles are like slant references to Shakespeare
Oh.
plays.
I feel like TNT is that that older like aunt or uncle that you have that is like aware of what you're into but not well versed in it. So they're trying so hard to like connect with you about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like it always feels like that with all TNT shows. They're like, "Oh, cop dramas. You like cop dramas? Well, here's this insane one where everybody shoots everybody in the head in the final episode. What is happening? What?" Or like, "Hey, here's this show about you like Will Shakespeare, right? And you like Game of Thrones, right? Well, let's do this thing." It's like, "No, no, guys, wait a minute. Take a breath."
You like going to the barber shop, right? Here's one about a corrupt barber shop where all the ladies are now involved in mafia-esque crime.
Yeah,
Claws on
yeah.
TNT.
We heard you liked
We
Breaking
know
Bad, and we
drama.
heard you liked Beauty Shop. So here's Claws.
Niecy Nash.
Oh my God. She's that one from that Scream show that you all liked, right?
Scream Queens, right? It's like
Yeah.
Scream Queens in a barbershop and no horror. Claws. And it's like TNT, we know drama, right? We know drama. And I'm just like, I wish you guys kept Franklin and Bash on the air.
You do drama so well. Oh man. Well, I've been trying out a show myself. Actually, I say trying out a show. I've watched the first episode of something. Dirk Gently has hit Hulu.
Oh.
Yeah, we know your feelings on this. We've talked about this before, actually, on this show. So it's no surprise to me that you're feeling that way. Do you have any interest in checking it out though? Now that it's kind of like freely available the entire season.
Now that it's available, I'll probably watch the first episode, right? I
Yeah.
love the character of Dirk Gently so much. It's just that I've been burnt so many times by adaptations of the character. Like, putting aside the Steve Mangan one, which was excellent. Like, it's 4 great episodes of television. You know Audible, right? Through Amazon,
Yeah,
like audible.com. When I flew to London the first time ever, the thing that I did was I read Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul during the flight. And it got me real excited to land in Heathrow Airport because the beginning of that is an explosion happening in Terminal 2. So like, I'm like, yeah, this is fun, right? And it was fun. It was a good time. So then when I was going back to London to visit our boy Will, like 3-4 years ago, I had Audible and like, you get a free book download. And I'm like, oh, well, apparently the adaptation of Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul is more like a radio play. And that sounds exciting to me, right? Like, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
And especially because I was feeling a hole in my heart from the Dirk Gently television series that had just been canceled. And I downloaded it, and it's the first and only thing I've ever downloaded from Audible. And it put me right to sleep. Like, just droning on and on. It just missed the point on all of the humor of these characters and the situations. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I slept, right? And I was like wide awake. Like I slept before I got on the plane so that I would stay awake on the plane because I'm getting in at a time where like I'll sleep when I get there and then I'll be like adjusted to London time, right? I like tried to do it. That didn't work because I listened to the Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul 7-hour adaptation of that book and just was out within an hour. And it's,
disappointing. Jet lag. Dirk Gently gave you jet lag.
yes, right? And it's just like, come on, Douglas Adams.
So yeah. So I have no connection to this character. You know, I love me some Douglas Adams. I've read a ton of the Hitchhiker stuff and things like that. But I've never dove into this part of his repertoire. So I had no idea what I was getting into watching the show. So I don't think that it's in any way a true adaptation of the books necessarily. You'll have to correct me if you watch it, if I'm wrong. But like what it feels like is they're just going for more like the characters and seeing where they go from there, I guess. Or maybe, again, I've only watched one episode, or maybe they're going to build into the larger story eventually. But essentially, I was actually a little worried at first. This is my impression of the first episode, having no idea what I was getting into. I was a little worried at first because for the first 10, 15 minutes of the episode, it doesn't feel like a Douglas Adams anything. It's good, it's watchable, it's intriguing and interesting. Elijah Wood is the main character, not Dirk. He plays the partner Todd. Is it Richard? I might have been getting the name wrong. I think they name him Todd in the show, though. I might be, so maybe it's a character name.
That can be different. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But
So essentially, he plays this character that is having just the weirdest, worst day of his life, and then at some point, about 15, 20 minutes in, Dirk Gently shows up, and that's when the Douglas Adamsness of it all starts to kind of really come into focus. Because what happens is the dialogue shifts. Before that, it's a lot of weird events that are very Douglas Adamsy in concept, but maybe not in execution. It's really violent, for example, like extremely violent. And I just wasn't expecting that. You know, I'm fine with it. Like I enjoy a good gore fest as much as the next guy. But honestly, it was like watching the first episode of Preacher. I was just like, oh my God, like there's dead bodies and pieces flying everywhere, and there's dudes just getting hacked to pieces and things like that. And so I was like, what is going on? This doesn't feel like Douglas Adams at all. And then as soon as Dirk shows up, conversations start to happen between all of the characters that start to feel so much more like a Douglas Adams concept. Like the way that they talk about like everything fitting together, and the way that other characters have like parallel conversations and moments. And then that's when the filmmaking really starts to kind of feel Douglas Adamsy as well, because as the conversations get weirder and headier, so does some of the concepts in the filmmaking, and there's straight up parallel shots of characters doing things at exactly the same time and things like that you're like, oh, that was weird. Like they cut to the scene and that character, who you know is a good guy compared to the villain, is doing exactly what the villain was just doing. So that's really interesting that like and so it got, by the end of the episode, I'm all in. Like I totally want to check out the rest of the series. And to be honest, I wasn't hating it in the first 10 minutes either. But it took it a long time for it to really hit that it was a Douglas Adams concept or show or story or characters. So it doesn't really feel like it's a good adaptation as somebody that's never read those books. So like I'm interested to see what happens. The thing is the first season did relatively well. Cult classic, I think, would be the best way to describe it right now. There's a lot of people out there who are like, I know nobody watched this, but you have to watch this. That's the way that I've heard about this show. And then, just because Comic-Con happened this weekend, we actually got a peek at what is possibly going to be season 2, or what we know is going to be season 2 of the show. The first little teaser of that came out, and people had lost their minds about it. And I guess the creator of the show came out and said, Max Landis, he came out and said, like, yeah, we had a genre for the first season. We're going to kind of see if we can shift genres in the second. But not, we're not going to lose the weird sci-fi humor of it, but we're going to see if we can shift away from things like time travel. So, like, we'll see where things go as far as season 2 and stuff go. But I'm real interested in getting through season 1.
so as someone who has not seen the show but has read the books ad nauseum, like 20-page research paper on the first book, the fact that Dirk isn't introduced until later in the story makes me very happy. Because even though the first book is named after him, he's the titular character. He's all right. So the first Dirk Gently book, the Dirk Gently Holistic Detective Agency, is a lot of rejected ideas for Doctor Who that Douglas Adams had come up with.
I was going to say it feels hooey, but like in a dark, Torchwoody type of way. But anyway, keep going. Yeah, that is exactly what it felt.
So that book is 100%. Like lost ideas from that. And he's by no means the Doctor. Like Dirk Gently is not a stand-in for the Doctor.
No. You know what he is he's very much a Ford Prefect type character. If you want to look more at some Douglas Adams type stuff, at least that's what it feels like right now.
Did you read my 20-page research paper? Because those are the two I compared.
But that is what he honestly feels like. Which, to be fair, is. It's a weird kind of Mobius strip again of what it is Ford Prefect, and I'm assuming from what I've seen now of Dirk, fed in a lot to what writers on Who were doing with the Doctor, but at the same time, Douglas Adams then comes in and does a lot of weird stuff of his own that he's like, oh, the Doctor definitely inspired me to go this way with this character. So like it all starts to kind of blend together after a while. So yeah, but anyway, you were saying, so he's not quite Doctor Who.
Quite, but it's weird to say that because he almost sort of is Doctor Who. Like it reminds me sort of Blink, the episode Blink, where like he's on the fringes of it, and then he comes into this like existing story, and then just as quickly he's gone.
Right.
Like, the weirdest thing about the unfinished third Dirk Gently novel is the fact that characters from the second book, Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, are, like, big parts of, like, the 7-9 chapters that were written. Because it's, like, it's weird to, like, have carryover for Dirk Gently, because he's very much a fringe walker. Like he comes in and out of people's lives. Like he's always in the periphery, and then he like breezes into your life. He either helps or hinders whatever you're trying to do, and then just as quickly he's gone.
Yeah, well, it definitely feels like that in this episode. Like I said, it takes him about 15 minutes for him to show up, and even when he first shows up, he's not really part of what's happening until another 10 minutes in. Like it takes a long time for him. And it's about him having to force his way into the story. Actually, there's a lot of him being kind of pushed out by certain events and characters. So like it's really interesting because for a guy that, as you said, is the titular character of this thing, it takes him a good 30 minutes to really invest himself in the story because of the fact that the story is almost rejecting him the entire time.
I'm now sort of excited to watch this first episode on Hulu, and I will do that before our next episode. So I don't want to hear any more from you if that's okay. Like I don't want anything else spoilered.
No.
And I would like to watch it, and we will readdress it next week once I have watched the first, and if it is as good as Sejohn says, probably the second or third episode, and I can compare it against. Like, I don't want to call myself a scholar of Douglas Adams, but just that's sort of what I did to get through my English literature class in high school.
I was going to say, you did write a research paper, so...
Yeah, and she said this is publishable, but you didn't do the assignment, Devon. She's like, it really hurts to give you this D, because it's the best paper that I've read in the class, but I needed research from not just first... what is it called? Not first person. What is
primary
it?
Source?
Primary. Yeah, not just you. All you have is primary sources. I needed secondary sources, and I'm like, oh, well, I couldn't find any secondary sources that like supported my ideas and my theories, so it was difficult to find that. And then she's like, well, you should have looked outside of literary like stuff. Like you were assessing people and character types. Look at a psychology book. And I looked her in the eyes, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me that a month ago? When you're like, we're going to the library and we're going to read literary things in order to help with the research paper. And she's like, honestly, I didn't know that was the level your paper was going to be on. Not to insult you as a writer. I wasn't expecting anyone in the class to be at that level with the research paper they were going to deliver.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Shame this was the final project and I have no time to redo it with that.
Well, everybody else sucks at school, so what did you expect?
Dude, I got kicked out of class during discussions of Brave New World, like all the time. And at the end of the school year, she took me aside and she's like, I'm really sorry about having to kick you out all those times, but you were at a different level with that book, and I knew how frustrated you were getting with the class not being there. And it was easier to send you to the principal's office than to like watch you struggle.
Yeah, man, and that's what happens, right? Is you end up with these kids as somebody that's taught classes like that, you end up with that kid in front of you that's like invested in the material in a way that you just weren't prepared for, and it sucks that at that time, like the only tools that they had available for you were either come down to our level or get out. Right. And it's just like, what do you do for students in those positions? And, like talking about stuff like Brave New World or like looking at things like Dirk Gently and stuff like that, like Douglas Adams and like ripping apart like the deeper meanings in it. Like you want that. Like that's why those guys write the way that they do. Right. Like, I mean, just watching this one episode of this show and like all of the stuff I've seen, all of the Who episodes that Adams wrote and Hitchhiker's Guide and So Long and all that stuff. Right. Like how could you not like want to get deeper into that stuff? That they invite it, they ask for it. And so, yeah, man, it sucks to be that guy that's like ready to do that, to invest in that literature, to invest in the movie, to invest in the video game in a way that nobody else around you seems to want to.
Yeah, it does, man. It is the story of my life. And that's why we have a podcast, right? This is sort of like an origin episode.
There you go.
Oh man, this is going to be a doozy of a one to title. That's what I'm going to have to say.
Yeah, you're going to have to go deep and try and find something here.
All right, so with the final 10 minutes of the episode, I saw Dunkirk over the weekend.
Oh man. Okay, let's talk a little of some Nolan. What's the
Well,
top?
I don't want to talk Dunkirk because people should get out there and see it. I don't want to spoil Dunkirk in any way, shape, or form,
This
despite it
historical
being
event.
history. No, because like the history of Dunkirk, hopefully everybody knows what happens. But if you don't, British soldiers were trapped on the French coast of Dunkirk, and what was required in order to get them home was the mobilization of civilian vessels to get there and bring them home. I have
Yeah,
no
it's the
problem talking about that.
yeah, and it's the kind of the I'm trying to think of this the like proto story for that happening in every fictional thing since then is the idea of the civilians having to like band together to like save the day, right? Like I mean, think of the end of Pirate Radio, which again is another true story, but right, like all of the boats show up to like save them, right? That moment when the boats show up, Dunkirk is the reason that story exists in fiction. You know, that trope exists in fiction of the village coming together to save the town type of thing, you know? Yeah, so that's Dunkirk.
So that's Dunkirk, and I mean the stuff that I would want to really like dig into is involved in how he told the story.
Okay.
But again, that's not why I brought this up. Why I brought it up is I finally saw a trailer for Justice League before Dunkirk.
Oh man. Well, is Warner Brothers doing
Yes, yes.
Dunkirk?
Yeah,
Is that
it
what
is a Warner.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
of course it is. It's Christopher Nolan.
Right, it's Nolan.
He's their
So
golden
yeah,
boy
yeah.
right now.
Right, right.
And like as it happened, I'm like, makes sense. I saw my first Dunkirk trailer before Suicide Squad,
The circle of life.
and so Sejohn, you've seen the initial Justice League trailer, right?
Oh, I've seen all of them up until I think the last few that came out of Comic-Con this past weekend. So like I haven't seen the latest one or two that came out, but I mean I had seen the teaser, the pre-rendered trailer that they had put out where like Ezra Miller has to pretend to dodge a batarang because they hadn't CGI'd one in yet. But yes, I had seen it.
Okay, that one. So the finished one where he dodges the batarang and stuff.
And he's like weirdly geeky snippy to Bruce. Yeah.
You're Batman.
Batman.
I have a stutter because I'm faster than the speed of light.
Oh God.
I got it. I got the title.
Had to get it in there.
Solved that mystery. Sorry. Can I tell you what really like sold me on the movie? Besides the fact that Aquaman is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like I want Aquaman to be the new kid at school and choose to sit next to me at lunch.
Yeah, man.
So cool.
There are, as has been the case with every DC preview that has come out, there are things I really like about it and things I really don't. So like I'm excited on one level, but really nervous on others. But anyway, keep going.
The thing that like really okay, well, we'll get to nervous, but what really did it for me, what really has me sitting here, a person who like I don't understand DC, but like excited about this movie is the fact that Lois Lane is in exactly one frame of the trailer, and then there is no other talk of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
That is great. Because it would be pretty amazing if Superman were not in Justice League.
Well, of course he's in Justice League, right? He has to be the third act reveal. He comes back to life, doesn't it? Like that has to be what happens, right?
Yeah, I hope not. Like seriously, DC, you want to swing me around because you know I am on the fence, DC. I have said it so many times on this Day Report, and I say it whenever I can out in the real world. You want to bring me to your side? Keep Superman dead for Justice League.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting idea. You know, like, I mean, part of it is because I think that Bruce's motivation for doing this whole thing, putting this team together, is the fact that Supes is now dead. And he realizes that without the Man of Steel, he needs as much help as he can get, right? Like, everything that happened in the Batman versus Superman movie has led him to believe he needs a team in order to deal with things that might come his way that he's not ready for. And the fact that he lost what he thinks is probably going to be his best asset, Superman, means that he has to go out there and find whatever he can. Starting with Wonder Woman, who also helped him out, but then going to things like Aquaman and the Flash and stuff like that. And so if the whole idea throughout the whole thing is like Soup's presence is like felt but not ever seen, that would be really cool. Like if there's like a statue of him somewhere that they're all like praying to essentially and just being like, we do this because this is what he would have done, that sort of thing, and make him almost godlike. That'd be kind of fascinating to me.
Like it would really change the narrative, and it would shut up all the people like Sejohn who are like, well, that has to be the third act reveal, right?
I don't think that they've got the balls to make this movie and not have Superman come back to life in this one.
I know, but if they,
I would love it.
But if they were to hold off on it, right, the narrative you can tell in future movies is that sure, he comes back, because of course you bring back Superman, right? But you leave him out of this movie, right? Let them taste and feel the sun on their faces as he is not there to absorb its rays and become more than a man. And then have him come back, and one of the conflicts be that we were great without you, right? We don't need you to be great.
We don't need you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. The idea that they could say to him, look, we don't need you would be a huge deal. You're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong at all. But I unfortunately don't think that Warner Brothers is willing to do that. But we'll see, because, you know, at the end of the day, Superman is not their cash cow like he once was. Batman is all the way.
Are you kidding me? Wonder Woman is all the way. As she continues to be the most successful comic book movie almost ever.
Yeah.
Standalone or whatever. Also, it's kind of sad. I'm going to just straight up say this. I feel for War for Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Because
I think that War for Planet of the Apes is going to go down as one of those movies that everybody likes, but nobody's willing to go and spend money on. You know what I mean? I think anybody that's seen it is going to be like, oh, yeah, War for Planet of the Apes was great. Anybody that hasn't seen it is just like, they're not hating on it. They're just not into it right now because there's other things to go out and see. A la Wonder Woman.
Exactly. No, but it's more the fact that, like, it beat Spider-Man Homecoming, right? War for Planet of the Apes beat Spider-Man Homecoming. And it totally should have, just like narrative-wise. Like, it's a great film. Have you seen it yet?
No, I have not seen it yet.
Oh, Devon Decker approves War for the Planet of the Apes. Even if you haven't seen the other movies, they do a really good job of, like, making it an access point.
Okay.
So that is fantastic. And it beat Spider-Man Homecoming, which is part of what fed into, this is the greatest loss for a Marvel movie, the second greatest loss for a Marvel movie ever, is the fact that War for Planet of the Apes came out. But then this past weekend, while Dunkirk and Girls Trip were taking the 1 and 2 spots, and Valerian was, 1,000 planets away from that, Spider-Man took 3 and War for Planet of the Apes took 4. And I just wish that it had the retention to be bigger than one weekend.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. Like, it is one of those movies that like people went to go see, the fans went to go see it, but to the casual viewer, it's not drawing them into the theater. And
it's not.
And it's disappointing. It's really disappointing to me, especially because I was talking to people and the name Steve Kahn was mentioned. The musician Steve Kahn came up, and it made me think of Steve Zahn, who has a role in War for Planet of the Apes. And 6 days later, all I could think was, man, I really liked that movie.
And I think that's going to be the final say on that movie. Is people are going to be like, "Oh, right, War for Planet of the Apes. I really like that movie." That's going to be the story. That's
It's so good. Woody Harrelson is so good.
Oh, yeah.
I love him. I love him. All right, so I have expelled everything I wanted to talk to this week.
No, this was a good one, man. I'm happy that we did this.
Anything else to add before we give our little information?
Just good night and good luck.
Good night and good luck from @DevonD.Decker.
And @Siege vs. the World.
Take it away, William.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.